Transhumanists advocate the improvement of human capacities through advanced technology. Not just technology as in gadgets that you get from Best Buy, but technology in the grander sense of strategies for eliminating disease, providing cheap but high-quality products to the world's poorest, improving quality of life and social interconnectedness, and so on. Technology that we don't notice because it's blended in with the fabric of the world, but would immediately take note of its absence if it became unavailable. Have you ever tried to travel to another country on foot? Technology needn't be expensive. Indeed, if a technology is truly effective, it'll pay for itself many times over. Now, transhumanists tend to take a longer than average view of the technological progress, looking not just 5 or 10 years into the future, but 20 years, 30 years, and even beyond. These advocates of transhumanism realize that the longer you look forward, the more uncertain the predictions get. But one thing is quite certain: if a technology is physically possible and obviously useful, human or transhuman, ingenuity will see to it that it gets built eventually. As we gain ever greater control over the atomic structure of matter, our technological goals become increasingly ambitious and their payoffs more and more generous. Sometimes new technologies even make us happier in a long-lasting way. And the internet would be, I guess, a prime example. However, in the following list, I want to take a look at some of the major transhumanist technologies. At the top of my list is cryonics. Now, as you can see here, there's an organization called alcor.org who is, they're part of the Life Extension Foundation, and cryonics, which is their specialty, is the high fidelity preservation of the human body, and particularly the brain. Now, I have mentioned this in earlier videos, and how it works is that after what we would call death, in anticipation of a possible future revival, cryonics is an important transhumanist technology, not only because it is already available today, but because the technology is relatively mature and we can reliably stop cells from decaying. In vitrification, the brain is not frozen in the conventional manner, but with a cryoprotectant or an antifreeze mixture, which effectively prevents the formation of crystals and causes the water to freeze smoothly like glass. Now, maintenance of a cryo patient is not difficult. It requires no electricity, but merely the replenishment of liquid nitrogen about every 3 weeks. And as cryonics becomes more popular, this process could become automated and extremely reliable. Further improvements in Dwar technology will continue to increase safety and reduce costs. The Cryonics Institute in Michigan, for example, has operated since 1976 without a single mishap. Now, it's financed by the interests of a payout of a life insurance policy, which for people under 40 may cost as little as $100 a year to own. Patients can be securely cryopreserved for as long as the cryonics company stays afloat and the Dwar stays in one piece. Eventual revival does not require the technology to become available tomorrow or next year, as long as the liquid nitrogen continues to be replenished. You can stay on ice for as long as it takes. For an existence, proof of cryonic revival, there are frogs that can freeze solid and revive later, though reviving a human from freezing would likely require molecular nanotechnology, MNT for short. And when we will be able to revive a cryo patient will be strongly related to when this MNT is developed. It's a very sophisticated process. And then once we develop MNT, the prospect of successful revival is extremely likely. It would involve slowly melting the ice and rebooting the metabolism by kick-starting the appropriate chemical reactions within the cells. So the bottom line is that you can get frozen pretty easily. It's the thawing out part that you have to concern yourself with. Virtual reality, which is another transhumanist technology. And if you look at this photo, it looks like a regular photo, but it's actually a screenshot from a game called Crisis, and a first-person shooter, which will be released soon, if it's not already. And you look at the screenshots from the game, and you'll see that the computer graphics are already beginning to approach photorealism. So sometime in the 2020s, reality simulations will become so high resolution and immersive that they'll start to get indistinguishable from the real thing. Simulations will become the preferred environments for work and play, and pretty soon the main obstacle to truly immersive virtual reality will not be the visuals, but the haptics, or our sense of touch, to fool our senses into believing haptic technologies are conveying the real thing. The frame rate needs to be significantly higher for visual technologies, a few hundred updates per second rather than a few dozen, which is why development could take another decade or two. But many millions of dollars are currently going into efforts to develop advanced virtual reality. Now, clearly, the World of Warcraft's 8 million subscribers and Second Life's 5 million subscribers are onto something. At least 1% of all broadband internet users play in virtual worlds, and this number is increasing rapidly. And this should tell you something about us. If we are so caught up into our virtual worlds, then what's going on in our real worlds? These virtual worlds typically outclass the real world in terms of customizability, but still have yet to catch up in terms of sensory richness or social fulfillment. But it's only a matter of time. In the mid to late 2020s, expect full-body, high-quality haptic virtual reality suits to be affordable to the average person in developed countries, obtained either from your local Walmart or perhaps printed right out of a desktop nano factory after payment of a fee. And this is pretty interesting how many of us are caught up on these things. The next area of transhuman technology that I want to touch on is gene therapy and RNA interference. Now, gene therapy replaces bad genes with good genes, and RNA interference can selectively knock out gene expression. Together, they give us an unprecedented ability to manipulate our own genetic code by knocking out genes that code for certain metabolic proteins. Scientists have been able to make mice that stay slim no matter how much junk food they eat. Lou Gehrig's disease has been cured in mice, and it could only be a few years before there is a therapy developed that can cure it for humans as well. Aubrey de Grey's SINS, which is an acronym for Strategies for Engineered Negligible Senescence research program, contains various prescriptions for the use of gene therapy. Within a couple of decades or so, progress in anti-aging therapies will improve to the point where we are gaining more than an extra year of lifespan per year, reaching so-called longevity escape velocity, eventually culminating in indefinite lifespans. Now, like many transhumanist technologies, gene therapy is really exciting because it's just the beginning. No scientist has yet performed gene therapy or germline cells, which are sexual cells in gonads, due to the ethical controversy of producing genetic changes which are heritable. But as with many of these things, it's only a matter of time. Regulations in any given country will only be capable of slowing the overall progress of the field by a few years at most. And the money will go where the research is permitted. In its mature form, gene therapy and genetic engineering will become extremely cheap and powerful, letting humans live comfortably in a wider range of environments and gain immunity to most, if not all, diseases. Supercomputers of the future, with thousands of millions of times the crunch power of today's best, will let us simulate the changes in extreme detail before we attempt them with actual human beings. And this will make ill side effects quite unlikely for the typical case, much to the dismay of the authors of genetic engineering. You know, this is something that has been the fueling for all of these zombie trash novels and films. Space colonization is another transhumanist goal, and it's already here. Space colonies will become necessary to house the many billions of individuals that will be born in the future as our population continues to expand at a lazy exponential. In his book, Marshall T. Savage wrote The Millennial Project, and he estimates that the asteroid belt could hold 7,500 trillion people if thoroughly reshaped into O'Neill colonies. At a typical population growth rate for developed countries at 1% per year, doubling every 72 years, it would take us 1,440 years to fill that space. Siphoning off light gases off Jupiter and Saturn, and siphoning off the light gases off Jupiter and Saturn, and fusing them into heavier elements for construction of further colonies seems plausible in the long term. Cybernetics. Look at this picture. Can you spot the cyborg in this picture? Well, you're looking at him. His name is Michael Korost, and he was born almost deaf, but now he can hear thanks to a cochlear implant. Most of the cyborgs in fiction fit certain stereotypes. Bimage, wannabes, cyborg assassins, and super cops. But cyborgs already walk among us, and they look just like normal people. The trend will continue in the future. Many cyborg upgrades, which will become available in the 20s and 30s, such as hearing and vision enhancement, metabolic enhancement, artificial bones, muscles, and organs, and even brain-computer interfaces, will be invisible to the casual observer, but implanted beneath the skin. And cybernetic features on the surface, such as dermal enhancements or technological actuators like retractable wings, will be carefully camouflaged. No one will want to shock the rest of society by looking different in public. Or should I say, looking extremely different in public. The process of cyborgization has already been happening for centuries, if not millennia, since the advent of clothing and piercings for many generations, but especially in the last couple of decades. Technological gadgets have been getting smaller, more functional, and more closely integrated with our natural activity. And it's interesting, recently Microsoft, remember them, announced Microsoft Surface, and it's a mouseless, keyboardless form of desktop computing which takes input from finger tracing and hand gestures. This sophistication of biotechnology and the availability of better materials and precision manufacturing will let us make systems so small and effective that even everyday people will elect to implant them. These cybernetic systems will greatly improve our everyday experience, from letting us hear a wider range of ambient sounds to viewing millions of stars rather than just a few thousand, to making us more resistant to accidents. They will improve the overall economy by enabling us to do more work in less time for better pay. And in the long term, enhanced humans may get a bigger portion of the economic pie than unaugmented humans, but that pie itself will become so much larger than even the poorest humans of tomorrow will be better off than the wealthiest humans of today. Moving on, autonomous self-replicating robotics. Why do manual labor when the robots can do it for you? Self-replication might be considered the holy grail of robotics, but a NASA landmark study entitled Advanced Automation for Space Missions found that robotic self-replication is just a matter of engineering and that no fundamental theoretical breakthroughs are needed. The study proposed sending a 100-ton package to the moon with a self-replication time of 1 year and letting it self-replicate until the desired level of development is attained. Now, the design, which was fleshed out in great detail, was based on electric carts running on rails within the factory, paying machines that direct sunlight to melt lunar regolith, robotic strip miners for obtaining raw materials, and a solar cell canopy for powering it all. After 10 years, over 100,000 tons of lunar factory could be produced autonomously. The factory's functions could then be hijacked for the benefit of human colonists and used to produce housing products and provide large quantities of solar power. If similar self-replicating systems could be constructed on Earth, there would be little limit to the material that they could provide. And I'm talking plenty of material. Self-replicating factories could turn that vast, empty badlands of Australia into lush gardens by pumping water from the ocean. Self-replicating factories in the high Arctic could melt snow and create gigantic transparent domes suitable for habitation. And submersible automata in the seas could dredge sand from abiotic regions of the ocean floor and process it into gigantic platforms for human colonization. Molecular manufacturing. If self-replication is the holy grail of robotics, then molecular nanotechnology is the holy grail of manufacturing. And molecular nanotechnology would use massive arrays of nanometer scale actuators, produced initially through self-replication to manufacture macroscale products and atomic precision. This concept is known as nanofactory. And in practical terms, the creation of nanofactories would mean that practically everything could be made out of diamond. Motors would become so powerful that a cubic centimeter would provide enough torque to propel a car. Medical nano devices could heal wounds and repair organs without the need for surgery. And air-suspended nano devices, utility fog, could be configured to simulate practically any desired object on demand. On the downside of things, of course, it could become easy to manufacture mite-sized robots with a payload of poison sufficient to kill thousands, or a laptop seized device capable of separating U-235 from U-238 in a worrisome simple and rapid fashion, or self-replicating synthetic algae capable of clogging up our oceans. So, enabling widespread use of the positive applications while cleanly and completely suppressing the nasty applications is a first order challenge. And you can make a difference right now, if you opted to do so. There are many organizations out there who are focusing on this area. And I'm not going to name them here because the jury in my case is still out on whether or not I think this is a good thing. I'm actually not pro transhumanism because so much of it doesn't require human input after the initial draft. And what I mean by that, and I've said it in other videos, is that it's just like these unmanned missiles. When you rely on technology to the point of running the world, these machines do not have a brain, or they call them artificial intelligence, but it's deeper than that. There is no intelligence. The machine is not intelligent. When you send that drone out and it's programmed to shoot, that machine is not going to distinguish from a child playing in its yard and a terrorist jumping from roof to roof. It's going to aim and fire, and it's not going to have the compassion that comes with having a human behind the missile that can make an intelligent choice as to not to kill the child. Megascale engineering. Most people are familiar with megascale engineering because it's seen throughout fiction. The Death Star, for instance. Typically, megascale engineering refers to building structures at least 1,000 kilometers in length in one direction, such as space elevator, Globus Cassis, or the Dyson Sphere. Now, with the self-replicating robotics described, the production of such large structures could be done largely by autonomous drones, with intelligent agents only managing the highest top-level functions and architecture. And here we go again. Considering that mankind's long-term future is in space, and that space right now is pretty devoid of any structure useful or habitable to humans, there's a lot of work to do. And if you can make the projects megascale, like everything else, why not? So like some of the other items on this in this video that I've mentioned, megascale engineering is only indirectly transhumanist, but it's still very relevant to the long-term future of intelligent life. Which brings me to mind uploading. Now, mind uploading, sometimes referred to as the non-biological intelligence, centers around the controversial proposition that cognitive processing can be implemented on substrates or other than our current neurons, considering decades of successful results in neurophysiology and the recent construction of the world's first brain prosthesis, an artificial copy of the hippocampus. This seems very likely. It appears that our minds are defined more by the information pattern they embody than the particular hardware they are implemented on. Now, numerous philosophers of the mind have long recognized this, but acceptance among the wider public has been a long time in coming. People don't want to think that they're just data structures being implemented as computational automata on biological neurons, but it is hard to think of it any other way. Once we dismiss the possibility of an immaterial soul, we must acknowledge the mind as a material pattern implemented in physical configurations. And if other substances aside from our current neurons can meet the requirements for these configurations, then there is no reason why intelligence and consciousness could not exist on another substrate. Now, this goes a lot deeper than simple mind control, because in order for you to, to be able to to do this particular experiment, for lack of a better word, you have to consent to it. Unlike mind control that is done without your knowledge, this is actually something that people sign up for. Mind uploading. This is I don't understand why. Our brains really don't have to be made out of meat, but then we can transfer them to other substrates. So by incriminately replacing each neuron with a synthetic neuron equivalent, the whole process appears to go down painlessly and seamlessly. The problem with it is that we're messing with the natural order of things, and the transfer could be as slow or as fast as we want. From the information processing perspective of the brain itself, nothing ever changes. Light still comes in through the eye's lens. It hits the retina, is transformed into nerve impulses which travel down the optic nerve, receives further processing in the visual cortex at the back of the brain, and the highlights which are sent to the prefrontal cortex for integration with information from other senses. The brain cannot tell if it's made out of traditional meat or accelerated biological neurons or entirely non-biological neuron equivalents. The computation is the same. And sometimes this notion is also referred to as an application of the Church-Turing thesis. And I had mentioned that briefly in my last video, and at some point I will go into detail, but not in this one, I won't. Let me just suffice to say in regards to this, if entirely synthetic brains are possible, then there's nothing stopping such persons from inhabiting computer networks, not indirectly sitting in chairs as we currently do, but directly engaging in computer worlds as a sentient program of tremendous complexity, with molecular manufacturing on hand. Reversing the process would be as simple as printing out 100 or so kilograms of flesh and bone again, complete with memories from the networked experience. And if this sounds like a movie, it actually sounds like quite a few, because these are things that they've been showing us and preparing us for in Hollywood for years. And this is probably among the transhumanist visions that most reliably elicits that yuck reaction. But if functionalism is true, then virtual experience will be indistinguishable from physical experience. Not only that, but even more enjoyable due to the manifold degrees of freedom which would become newly accessible. In a virtual world, there are no laws of physics except those that we choose. And that's, I'm sure, a lot of people's very happy place. Many of you desire to be in a world where not only are there no physical laws, but there are no moral laws as well. And this is why these games are so popular, because you can just wreak havoc in your virtual world. Okay, so in terms of this transhumanism, I guess last but not least, of course, is the artificial intelligence. And AI, this is something I've avoided dealing with for a long time. But as I've already argued, functionalism seems likely, and if so, strong artificial intelligence is possible. Thinking, feeling, imagining, creating, communicating, thoughtful, synthetic intelligences with conscious experiences. Whether serial computing is sufficient or parallel computing is necessary, both are within technological reach. And the present-day computing speeds are fast approaching the computer power of the human brain. In fact, according to many estimates, the fastest present-day supercomputer, which is called Blue Gene P, has already exceeded it. Blue Gene P operates continuously at speeds of over a petaflop, which is 1,000,000 billion operations per second, Whoa, for strong artificial intelligence skeptics, no computer, even one operating at trillions of trillions of trillions of operations per second, is sufficient to implement true intelligence. Distinct from artificial intelligence in general, which has come to refer to any sophisticated software program, artificial general intelligence refers to AIs that display open ended learning and similar competency levels to human beings. So there does exist computers that display learning and competency level, which is similar to us. That's some scary-ish right there. A handful of researchers who are working diligently towards artificial general intelligence were informed by the mathematics of inference and probability theory, which is a person named Schmidhuber, whose main scientific ambition has been to build an optimal scientist, then retire. Then we have Marcus Hutter, who's the author of the landmark book Universal Artificial Intelligence. And then there's Ben Goertzel, who recently presented his AI design in a talk to Google. And then there's Eliezer Yudkowsky, who is developing a reflective decision theory from first principles. So whether or not others believe in the feasibility of general artificial intelligence, these individuals continue to work, and one will eventually succeed. The way the world would be impacted by the arrival of general artificial intelligence is too extreme to discuss in much detail. If raw materials such as sand can be converted into computer chips and then into intelligent minds, eventually the majority of material in the solar system could be made intelligent and conscious. And the result would be a noetic renaissance, the expansion of intelligence and experience beyond our wildest dreams. And conversely, if not given empathetic values, artificial intelligence could lead to the doom of us all. It may very well be the coming of the Antichrist. It's up to us to set the conditions appropriately, or we may not even be around to regret this. So it is a possibility that we're on the verge of blowing ourselves up. We don't have to wait for some scary terrorists to do it, because we're going to do it ourselves. And so that's my take on transhumanism. I may revisit this again. I look forward to your questions, and I thank you. I thank you for your time. Lord, where are we going with this? We've taken what you've given us, and we've taken it to the nth level. We've created all these things, these life extension programs, and artificial intelligence, and mind reloading, and all of this stuff, because we are so desperate to be anything other than what you've made us, Lord. Now, there are some of us who are quite content and happy with what you've done, Lord, in our lives, and we live to serve you. But on a greater scale, there are those who can never have enough. And it is these greedy individuals who will become the downfall of this wonderful earth that you've given us, and everything that you've given us free to use at our will and to eat and to enjoy, and we are not content. We strive to expand. You gave us the earth, but we want the moon, and we want Saturn, and we want all these other places that were not given to us, Lord, but we're determined to build and create life on these other places, and to expand our years, and to do all of these means, these artificial means that are against you, Lord. And people need to just learn to not go with the flow. Just because someone tells us, oh, you know what? There's something happening on the other side of that fence that's better for you than what's on this side. I don't want anyone handing me a ticket, even if it's free, to go to another planet. My work is here. This is where we have to learn to take root where we are planted. And all of this freezing our brains for a later day, who's to say that, I'm sure for every frozen brain in these cryogenic facilities, there's a scientist somewhere laughing his head off at the person whose brain is sitting there waiting to be revived. Who's to even say that there will be a revival and that we will be at it? Touch the people, give them intelligence. We don't need artificial intelligence. We need real intelligence right now. We need the people to become alert and to be governors of their own future. We've given away that power too long already, where we've allowed others to make our decisions for us. We, the people, have to decide what is right, Lord, and we have to know that it is only through you, our Father in heaven, Christ, that we live, we breathe, and we carry on. And it is through your mercy that we get up to do it again and again. Thank you, Lord. Amen.